Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Maharaj. Today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Pariksit Prabhuji from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Prabhuji is going to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 10th chapter, 5th verse. So before handing over to Prabhuji, I just want to give a small introduction about Prabhuji. His Grace Pariksit Prabhu is a retired PhD professor from Penn State University with about 30 years of teaching experience. He joined ISKCON in 1991 at Washington, D.C., taking shelter of His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami, and took initiation in 1994. He, along with his wife Anasuya Mataji, moved to Gitanagari in 1995 and were personal servants of His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami for a couple of years. Pariksit Prabhu managed the audio ministry of Bhaktitirtha Swami and performed many other services for 21 years. He is also an accomplished musician. Pariksit Prabhu moved to Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania in 2016 with his wife and 2 adult daughters. His wife serves as the temple president for ISKCON Harrisburg, and his 2 daughters, Manoharini Vrinda Devidasi and Rajagopi Vishakha, will be graduating soon. Very nice to know about you, Prabhuji. All glories to your services, to your Guru Maharaj. Hope we'll follow your footsteps someday. Thank you so much for your association and time for all of us today. I'll just share my screen. You can start, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Okay, Hare Krishna. By the way, I'm a little humbled by all the things you said about me, but the one that I take the greatest joy in is just like most of you, even at all of you, are Diksha disciples or aspiring disciples for His Holiness Chandamali Swami. I am a Shiksha disciple of Chandamali Swami. That I'm happy to say. All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Vivadadari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Thira Vanachari Yamuna Thira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhari Yashodanandana Jagajana Ranjana Yamuna Thira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Jaya Radha Damodara, Radha Damodara Tirade Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Tirade Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Jaya Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Nitai Gura Haribo Gora, Haribo, Nitai Gora, Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora, Haribo. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivajikacharya, bestowed at a Satashi Shimadi's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivajikacharya, bestowed at a Satashi Shimadi's divine grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivachari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Bhavanande. Hare 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 Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the Lord Sri of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale. Hemate Bhakti Swami Namini. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Siddharthan. Igor Karuna Shakti Bhakti. Narayana Namaste Chanarun Chevam Narotamam. Devi Saraswati Vyasam Tutuja Mudirayat. Nasta Prayeswa Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavata Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. My greetings to all devotees at Brahma obeisances. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. So this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class is from Canto 1, Chapter 10, in Text 5. So I'll recite the Sanskrit now. Nadya Samudra Giraya Savanaspasti Virudha Halantyo Sadaya Sarva Kamam Anvitu Tasya Vai Nadya Samudra Diraya Savanaspati Viruda Halantyo Sadaya Sarva Kanam Anvitu Tasya Vai Nadya Samudra Giraya Savanaspati Viruda Palantyo Sadaya Sarva Kaman Anvitasya Vai. Hare Krishna. So we do the word for word, or do some of you repeat the Sanskrit? I don't know what's normally done by you guys.
Usually we don't repeat, Prabhuji.
Okay.
We continue.
So we continue. All right. So word for word then. Nadia, rivers. Samudra, oceans. Giraya, hills and mountains. Savanaspati, vegetables. Viruda, creepers. Halanti, active. Ustadaya, drugs. Darva, all. Kamam, necessities. Anvitu, seasonal. Tasya, for the king. Vai, certainly. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. Report by Srila Prabhupada. Since Maharaj Yudhishthira was under the protection of the Ajita, the infallible Lord, as above mentioned, The properties of the Lord, namely the rivers, oceans, hills, forests, etc., were all pleased, and they used to supply their respective quota of taxes to the king. The secret to success is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord. Without his sanction, nothing can be possible. To make economic development by our own endeavors on the strength of tools and machinery is not all. The sanction of the Supreme Lord must be there. Otherwise, despite all instrumental arrangements, everything will be unsuccessful. The ultimate cause of success is the Deva, the Supreme. Kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira knew perfectly well that the king is the agent of the Supreme Lord to look after the welfare of the mass of people. Actually, the state belongs to the Supreme Lord. The rivers, oceans, forests, hills, drugs, etc., are not creations of man. They are all creations of the Supreme Lord, and the living being is allowed to make use of the property of the Lord for the service of the Lord. Today's slogan is that everything is for the people, and therefore the government is for the people and by the people. But to produce a new species of humanity at the present moment on the basis of philosophy and religion, justice and peace, God consciousness, and the perfection of human life, in short, the ideology of godly communism, the world has to again follow in the footsteps of kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira or Pariksit. There is enough of everything by the will of the Lord, and we can make proper use of things to live comfortably without enmity between man and man, or man and animal, or man and nature. The control of the Lord is everywhere. And if the Lord is pleased in every part of nature will also be pleased. The river will flow profusely to fertilize the land. The oceans will supply sufficient quantities of minerals, pearls, and jewels. The forest will supply sufficient wood, drugs, and vegetables. And the seasonal changes will effectively help produce fruits and flowers in profuse quantity. The artificial way of living, depending on factories and tools, can render so-called happiness only to a limited number at the cost of millions. Since the energy of the mass of the people is engaged in factory production, the natural products are being hampered, and for this, the mass is unhappy. Without being educated properly, the mass of people are following in the footsteps of the vested interests by exploiting natural reserves, and therefore there is acute competition between individual and individual and nation. There is no control by the trained agent of the Lord. We must look into the defects of modern civilization by comparison here, and should follow in the footsteps of Maharaj Yudhishthira to cleanse man and wipe out anachronisms. Oma Gyanatyanam Tirandasya Gyana Gyana Shalakaya Chakchu Omalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Vayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupa Sagajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajiva Ragvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivachari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Peshtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini. Nirveshesha Sunyavari Paschatya Shitarini. Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Padayati. Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Kulakste Namaha. Ananda Lilamaya Vigrahaya. Mahadya Divacha Vishindaraya. Tasmi Mahaprema Raspadaya. Sri Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste. 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 Hare Krishna. So the translation of the text this morning is: the rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. Hare Krishna. So Srimad Bhagavatam is very deep in the way things get described. Sometimes we have to look directly at what's being said. Sometimes we have to look at the implications of what's being said. And sometimes we do both. The rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and different kinds of natural medicines in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. So clearly underlying this is a sense of goodwill, a sense of happiness, a sense of peace, all of that. And definitely more action in the mode of goodness among the people. That was there. The demigods pay attention to everything that we do because they are the ones that have been empowered by Lord Vishnu to deal with the material affairs in the different departments. So for the rivers and the oceans, the mountains, etc., to produce so much for the king means the king must be doing something right. And boy, do we need kings like that these days. We'll get into that later if the Lord permits me by message of Guru. But here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is describing first Maharaj Yudhishthira's consciousness. Maharaj Yudhishthira was under the protection of the infallible Lord. Ajita, infallible. Jita means fallible and Ajita means infallible. So the properties of a Lord, namely nature, everything found in nature, were all pleased and they used to supply their respective quota of taxes to the king. As a matter of fact, I've heard in another lecture that when the people act properly and they feel well protected, and when other living entities, the cows and so on, they all feel well protected and cared for, the demigods are also pleased and they give in all departments what is necessary to keep things going in this material world. Although it is a place of suffering, the big difference is in the spiritual world, you don't have to work. You serve blissfully. In the material world, everything is also provided, but we have to work to get them. That is the difference. We don't have the Kapabhiksha trees that you can go and just ask anything and it gets given to you and it's easy life. Very easy life because that's the way Krishna wants it. But that's when we're home. Still, we are fortunate to be here in this material world and also knowing how to get out. Those who are unfortunate are those who are in the material world and don't know how to get out or not even trying to. So it is very important for the ruler to bring people into Krishna consciousness, to God consciousness. Srila Prabhupada went as far as saying that if any religion makes people submit more to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that's good. If they will submit to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we also know that through his own mercy, things have been explained so nicely in the purports of Srila Prabhupada to us. And Krishna consciousness is transcendental. It is the one that guides us back home, back to Godhead. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying the secret to success is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord. And that without his sanction, nothing can be possible. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, the last text for chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action, and Krishna Consciousness. In the last text, chapter 5, talks about Krishna's position. And when we understand Krishna's position, that is in fact what gives us peace. Bhoktaram yagya sapata, sarvaloka maheshwaram, suhidam sarvabhutanam, gyatpamam shantim vichiti. The translation is that a person who is in full consciousness of me, that is me, Krishna, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and the demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. The person who understands these three, that person obtains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this is the peace formula. A person who thinks about me all of the time, just like Rupa Goswami says, always think of Krishna, never forget Krishna. But how do we think about Krishna? We should know him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he himself is saying here is that he's the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. So let's look at that. He is the ultimate beneficiary. Sometimes some people wrongly give sacrifices, pujas, to demigods for some material gain. Krishna explains that all sacrifices ultimately come to him, but those who do that to demigods do that in the wrong way, meaning that we should, as he's saying here, he's the ultimate beneficiary, we should give all sacrifices and austerities to the Supreme Lord. Kadama Muni, glaring, wonderful example of undergoing austerities for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord was very, very pleased. Not only was he pleased with Kadama Muni, but he even shed tears that Kadama Muni went through such inconvenience in austerity, in meditation, denying himself in so many ways, just to please the Lord. So when we hear of pure devotees doing like that, we should also try to do in our own small way the best that we can in austerity to the Lord. And so much is described in Bhagavad Gita about austerities. But the king, especially, when he is submitted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a lot of things go right because people look at what the leaders are doing. People are generally docile. They follow what the king is doing. If the king is doing well in terms of being God conscious and caring, then the people are happy and they'll follow the king. And they even want the king to be the king for a long, 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 long time. Why change what is good? But we're trying to get peace in a different way. After the wars, First World War, Second World War, then the nations of the world says, well, we should form United Nations. But immediately, there was no equity in the United Nations in terms of say. People having say in different countries, their representatives. immediately there's a group of people who say, well, we have the right to, because we're more powerful, to overrule if we're not happy with the decision that's been made. Now, that alone starts problems. Even if that rule is there, how are the other nations who are not part of the people who have, or the other nations who have the veto power, going to be happy? How would they feel cared for? So this doesn't work. So then Srila Prabhupada says, United Nations will not work. In fact, he made one comment in the United Nations building in New York City. Srila Prabhupada saw it and he saw all these different flags from different nations. Well, now the point is, if you have all these different flags, then what does that represent? If the countries are united, maybe there should be one flag, shouldn't there? One flag of unity. With all of these flags, and we've already talked about some nations having veto power, right to overrule the entire body. That's why it hasn't worked. Did the war stop? They didn't. They're still going on. So unity under a Raja Rishi, a king who is representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the means to happiness. The king will have characters and things that he will, in fact, decide on that will always be in the welfare of the people. So, if we understand that the Lord, and we live our lives that way, that he's a beneficiary of all sacrifices, he's a supreme Lord, both spiritual and material belong to him, and he's a benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. With that understanding, then we will also be able to live in this material world under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore attain peace. And that is the point Srila Prabhupada is making. The secret to success is to take refuge under the protection of the Supreme Lord, because without his sanction, nothing can be possible. Without his sanction, even for us, the Lord is in the heart area of every living being as Paramatma. And he is the one that gives sanction, supervises, gives sanction. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, yes, we have machinery and we try to do things and get into business and work hard. We use our tools and machinery, but that's not all. The sanction of the Supreme Lord must be there. What do we use our tools for anyway? Can we produce anything? The answer is no, unless we go to Mother Nature to get our starting materials. We cannot produce anything. There's not a single thing that's been produced anywhere in the world that the person that put it together did not go to nature to get the starting materials. So we are totally dependent on Mother Nature. And who owns nature? Krishna. Therefore, without the Lord, in the way he has set up things, nothing can be possible. And then on top of that is the Paramatma that also permits. And that is a feature of the Lord too, an expansion of the Lord. So all instrumental arrangements, the Papa says everything will be unsuccessful unless the sanction of the Lord is there. As we well see sometimes, nature, things happen, big factories. Next thing you know, there's an earthquake and a lot of things are lost. So it's all by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we are in, as they say in America, in his right side, not in the doghouse. In other words, if we do the things that we're supposed to do to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then even while we're here, we will be protected in this jail. And better yet, when we leave the body, Krishna will mercifully accept us back home, back to Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada says the ultimate cause of success is the Supreme. He's the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam, as Lord Brahma says. Kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira knew that the king is the agent of the Supreme Lord to look after the welfare of the mass of people. And speaking about the welfare of the mass of people, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a section from Vani Quotes, Canto 4, which talks about mostly about Maharaj Prithu, chapter 20, text 14. Fortunately, this also connects with Maharaj Yudhishthira, the same king we're talking about here. If a king or head of a government is able to induce the citizens to become Krishna conscious, then he is worthy to rule over the mass of the people. Otherwise, he has no right to levy taxes. If the king looks after the spiritual interests of the citizens, then he can levy taxes without any difficulties. This way, then the subjects and the king will be happy during this life, and in the next life, the king will be able to share 1/6 of the pious activities of the citizens. Otherwise, then you're levying taxes on the sinful citizens, you have to share the reactions of their sinful activities. So it is important for the king to rule in such a way that the citizens are happy. And the only way to make anyone happy is to connect them with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when the king is God conscious, and it's obvious to the people that he is God conscious, they will be God conscious. And the people are God conscious, then everything works wonderfully. Because when the demigods cooperate, as a matter of fact, in the times when, in Satya Yuga, for example, which is the times that the people are most pious, the weather was set up, especially, let's talk about rain. Rain was steady, and it was also in the evening when people have taken rest. Rain was not interrupting during the daytime what people did. And this is in the material world now. Still, things were working that nicely. Now, not only does rain fall whenever, sometimes if you're in the colder parts of the world, snow also comes, and there's so much inconvenience. The same weather that cooperates in times when people are cooperative and spiritual gives us problems. But it's this is Kali Yuga situation. It's our doing that makes people like this. And Srila Prabhupada, people go through what we're going through. Srila Prabhupada has said that the wars will continue because the cow is being slaughtered. The animal that gives so much, he's one of our 7 mothers. She's one of our 7 mothers. So much the cow gives us. And still people slaughter cows. So there can't be peace when that animal is being killed so mercilessly in the hundreds of thousands every day around the world, just so people can have the flesh of the cow. So people think they know what they're doing, but it's funny that sometimes in this country, especially in the United States, there's a sense that something is wrong, but nobody can put a finger on it. What is wrong? They're trying to find solutions materially, but the solution is getting closer to God, being more God conscious. And for us as devotees, the greatest benefit we can give to the world now is to chant and pray for a better situation. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And chant incessantly, chant constantly. The holy name is Krishna. And when we chant, our minds get focused on Krishna. And when we chant, especially when we chant out loud, then all of the entities around us also benefit from it. Even those ones in the non-human type bodies, they all benefit from a chanting of the holy names. Why? Well, first, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is spiritual. It's from the spiritual world. We are all souls, parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if a soul is not even in a non-human type body, still, the soul is there, the soul has senses, and the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra goes to benefit the soul, wake up the soul. Those in these type of bodies that are not human, they cannot chant. But when we chant, their souls can hear, and therefore they benefit from it. Therefore, we should chant not only to complete our schedule or this prescribed number of rounds, and if we chant extra, but we also should chant with the understanding that if I speak the mantra out, that those that are around me, the living entities in the non-human bodies, also benefit. And there are lots and lots and lots of them. Sometimes our eyes deceive us, as we know that these senses are not perfect. But if we could really see deeply, we would realize that there's a whole lot of little bodied living entities around them that we can't see. We call them germs, we call them bacteria, every single one of them also has a soul. And the Lord, the super soul, is also residing in there, in that physical body. So when we chant, they also benefit. Bringing the holy name to the whole world means just that, not for human beings only, but for all living entities. So as much as possible, even when we don't have our bead bags with us and we're going, we can just chant softly. Then the entities around us will all benefit from it. So that way, we're also doing a great service to the mass, not only of people, but all living entities. So when things work well, because the leader is pious and God conscious, then as it said in the translation, all of the things in nature give their respective quota to the king. That means that all of these nature works so wonderfully that everything that needs to be produced is produced in so much abundance, profusely. Then there is no scarcity anywhere. As Srila Prabhupada says, today's slogan is that everything is for the people. Everything is for the people. Government is for the people and by the people. So that anybody that's got money and that's got influence and that can put the other person down or sabotage the competitor, then they win. Or worse still, by deceit, tells people that they're going to do something that they know that if they get elected, that they won't be able to do, or they're not even thinking of doing when they get elected. They just want to get in for their own selfish interests. In this country, in America, people spend millions to advertise and to travel, and all that money gets spent. You wonder, well, if the person spends so much money, and we know the salaries of these people are not at that same level as the money they spend, then how do they make their money back? Do they go into politics to lose money? Obviously not. No person in their right mind is going to want to just go lose money. But the power comes with the money, and somehow they make it back. They won't let you know. And so the government is like that. It's a Kali Yuga. Government by the people, for the people. It's for the people. They say it's for the people, but the decisions are not made for the people. They are made for people's, in government's, selfish interest. So we can change that by chanting and bringing goodwill and good vibes into the community. And by doing so, slowly change. I remember His Holiness Chandra Swami made a statement that this world could have been just broken up a long time ago, this particular so-called civilization we have here. But the chanting of the holy name has pulled things back some. Therefore, we have to go on chanting. Yes, things would happen, nature, later on. The Yugas come, this is Kali Yuga. It will end. Whatever is supposed to be happening will happen. But our part is always to give goodwill to the people at large, because they don't know which way to turn. They do not realize that getting away from God is actually the biggest problems. The underlying cause of all the problems, big or small, in the world. Papa says there's enough of everything by the will of the Lord. When we make proper use of them, then we can live comfortably. We should be willing to give. And this is also a sign of love. Love gives freely. The person that's loving is more than happy to give. A person that's lustful takes because they're selfish. They want for themselves. So that's the big difference between love and lust. So devotees should show examples of loving beings everywhere they are and how they act. Among each other, we should act wonderfully. We should act respectfully. Because if we don't, and we act in a negative way, then we're committing aparad. And aparad means Srimati Radharani, the mother of devotion, wouldn't like what we're doing. And if she doesn't like it, we can't go back to the spiritual world. Therefore, we have to be very, very careful in how we relate to devotees. But what about relation to non-devotees? Well, we are, whether we know it or not, representing the International Society for Krishna Consciousness everywhere. Even if people don't know that we are members of ISKCON, by behaving in a wonderful way, in a respectful way, people will see us as very nice people. And that's good enough. That's only at the mode of goodness level, true enough. But when they see a person is a nice person, they want to make friends with that particular person. And when they see qualities that are Brahminical in devotees, the Vaishnava, we say Brahminical because the Vaishnava is automatically Brahminical. The Vaishnava qualities are all contained there in Brahminical qualities. In 1842 about Gita that is described in the qualities of Brahmana's work. So if we show that, then people will like us. And when they like us, they will listen to us. And when they listen to us, we can inject Krishna consciousness slowly in the lives of these people and start their progress on the royal path of devotion back home. And we gain tremendously from doing that because Krishna wants living entities back home, not in the suffering condition, but back home. So everyone that through our efforts or how we act towards them, make them want to be Krishna conscious or want to do what we do, that person is one that has started their journey back to Godhead. Therefore, Krishna is happy with us. And how we grow in Krishna consciousness very much depends on how much help we give others. How much help in God consciousness we give others. So when in the position like the one that Maharaj Yudhishthira had, he is taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How fortunate the citizens are in such a situation. So with our activities of book distribution, of chanting the holy name, of keeping ourselves enthused through sadhusanga, good sadhusanga, not just related to each other, but relating in order to help each other. That's very important. This is what would make the relationship between us and other devotees stay in a wonderful and transcendental level for the longest time. It is very, very important not only to relate well to devotees, but also to remind devotees of the need to chant and to hear and to serve from the heart from the heart. When we do things by instruction, that's one thing. Why do we do things? This is the last point we want to make, and then we'll open up for questions and comments. We have been given the opportunity through the message of Guru coming from Krishna and through Guru to us to serve. And when we serve devotionally, then it's like this. First, it's instruction. Go buy these sadhana bhakti, you just do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you follow that. But the ultimate is to come to the position of loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But since we have fallen out of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and we've been in the material world suffering, this process is to help us to develop our love again. So we are being given instructions, and when we follow the instructions of a spiritual master, sadhu, and serve deities very nicely, then after a while, it becomes a habit. And habit is the first step towards liking something. So it becomes a habit, you do it, do it. And because it's all transcendental activity, we begin to like it, and then we begin to love it. So from liking to love, and then Krishna Prema is slowly coming into our lives. And then we become happy, because the real happiness is happiness that will come from inside. And when we do that, and that happiness affects other people around us, and we associate very nicely, then in the end, we will have done tremendous service to ourselves, to Guru, to ourselves, because we stayed in Krishna consciousness. A tremendous service to ourselves means we have an opportunity to go back to Godhead. A tremendous service to others is that we enthuse them to stay in Krishna consciousness so they can go back to Godhead. A tremendous service we've done to other people who are not Krishna conscious is that we behave nicely towards them. They've liked us, and now they've become comfortable around us, and now we can inject Krishna consciousness to them so they can also begin their journey back to Godhead. So a lot depends on us, even while we're in this material world. How we behave. We have to take this process very, very, very seriously. It is the most important thing we can do in this world for ourselves. Krishna consciousness. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much for such a wonderful, inspiring class. As you
Krishna's mercy.
said, I like the point that where you said we grow in Krishna consciousness by helping others. And also the last part, like our behavior, which represents, as we are representing ISKCON, so how our behavior should be, and how we have to show as an example to others. Thank you so much. And a lot of wonderful points about current situation in this material world. So, and
by the mercy of Guru and Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dear devotees, if you have any questions or comments or any realizations to share, you can please go ahead, and please turn on your cameras if possible. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
So are there any questions or comments, realizations? We're all in this together. So, but it's a good trap, transcendental trap to be in, because it takes us back. Actually, we're not in a trap. We are on the boat going back to Godhead. Very fortunate we are. Obey the instructions of Guru. Take the process seriously. Hare Krishna.
Yes,
yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much for the wonderful class. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to him. All glories to the Vaishnavas.
Glories to Prabhupada.
That was a very wonderful class. There's many things in there that we hear a lot, but we still need to keep hearing until it gets drummed into us. And some of it I struggle with a little. if I pick like one thing, maybe, for example, when we talk about we must behave in a Vaishnava way, in the correct way, in a nice way, then we all know, I think every devotee knows how they should behave, but we're all work in progress. So we all have things inside us that make us say things, think things, do things that we shouldn't every so often. And then we feel bad about that afterwards. And then we feel like, oh, I'm not a proper devotee. So I wonder what advice you can give on that.
Hare Krishna. Very, very important question. Because what you talked about is the need for us to be taking the process of purification seriously. We have to be aware at all times that we are agents representing Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada has struggled so much in this material world to come to this horrible place and accept Krishna's request to come and doing so much work for us. When we remember how much effort the Srila Prabhupada has put in order to get this transcendental literature translated and explained further to us, when we see ourselves as very fortunate souls to come in contact with the Krishna consciousness, then because we feel fortunate, we're not going to want to mess up. So I know what you talked about. Sometimes when we, our emotions change and our lower nature is triggered, then we might start saying some things that, as you said, would regret later on. But the habit of being able to hold back comes with practice. Hold back from saying things that are negative. They come with practice. So, but how do we practice it? When we sometimes just triggers and boom, it's come out before we know what to do. If we can't control it, it's like everything else. Everything else we can't control, what do? We go in prayer to the authority to help us to remember. So that should be our prayer to Guru and to Lord Gauranga, to help us to control our emotions. And with that, just like we can't do it on our own. It was just like Draupadi when she was being stripped of the one cloth and sari. She fought Dushasana for a little while, and she realized that that's not going to work. And what did she do? Let go, raise her hand. Hey Krishna, hey Govinda. The solution came. So Krishna is always there to help us if we appeal to him through the proper channel. We have a channel, and the channel is Guru, representative of Krishna. So every day we should do what's required of us, especially if we want to learn to be humble. So these things, they're all connected. The last text of Sri Guru Astaka, which we sing in Mangalati in the morning, the third line is Dayan Stubham Stasya Yashastri Sandhyam. Dayan Stubham Stasya Yashastri Sandhyam. So Prabhupada was preaching the other day in the lectures, recorded this, I was listening to it. He says, Dayan Stubham Stasya Yashas, then stop. And the devotee says, Tri Sandhyam. He says, yes, Tri Sandhyam. You have to offer obeisances to the spiritual master 3 times a day. To these little things, it may sound little, but those little minute detailed type of things, when we do them, then Krishna is pleased because we're serving his representative nicely. Then what we need help from, he will provide us. The greatest thing Krishna does for us is purify us, because without purification, we can't go back to Godhead. But we have to do our part. So the little things, So sometimes we ignore, oh, well, yeah, spiritual master. No, when we get up in the morning, we have to offer obeisance, go down, offer obeisance. Then we start our day. And the day also should be with this prayer and say it in your own words the way you want to. But the bottom line, things that should be in the prayer is, dear Lord, dear Guru Dev, dear Guranga, Lord Guranga, let my day proceed according to your sanction, the way you want it to happen. And that is material and spiritual both. After all, the Lord owns material and spiritual. Why not? So appeal to the Lord in prayer before you start your day, that let everything happen according to your sanction, the way you want it. So then basically you have given your free will to the Lord, and then you made yourself a puppet for him to make decisions through you at work, at home, everywhere. And if you also surround yourself wherever you are with pictures, with music that remind you of Krishna, then basically you'll be thinking about Krishna the whole day. And the more you think about Krishna consciousness, has all the good things in it. Therefore, the ones that you're suffering, well, you're talking about, sometimes you slip and say some things and we regret later on. All of that, Krishna will give us help slowly to get out of it. But it all depends on how we submit our day, every day, to Krishna. That's also, by the way, surrender. If you think about it, it's also another way to surrender. So they all connected like that. Very good question. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you very much. I'll definitely try that probably.
Guru's mercy, Krishna's mercy. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I have a question. When we are helping other devotees, suppose they are very new, and so we are going to tell them, suppose they are afraid of taking a little steps, gradual steps to improve themselves or to advance. But at that time, if should we stop them, or should we not push them much, or should we let them go in their own pace, or like little push is needed for everyone? So I think like that. So I thought I'm like little pushy sometimes, I feel, but how to handle that type of situations, and how to encourage them, like without being pushy, too much pushy. So that's my question.
Well, I understand the question. It's a very important question, because our relationship with devotees matters a whole lot. It's actually the practice that we're doing now for the way we relate to those who are in the spiritual world. The way we relate to devotees now is practice. So it's a very important question to ask. Now, everybody has a higher nature and a lower nature. So things that they need to do, and if you are in position to have to guide them, you're guiding them to improve, that is, get away or reduce the lower nature and come up to the higher nature. Now, how do you do that? Well, there is the higher nature of that person. So if you don't want to come across as being pushy, in your own words, start first by giving a short praise of what they do right. Give them what they do right. When people, sometimes the egos are there. So sometimes even if you tell somebody, okay, you do this, you've been doing it nicely, then you could do this, so and so, and then you inject what you want. Yeah, like that. And by the way, as you're saying it, since you're going to start with something positive about the person before you talk about what, don't just have a straight face. Smile. It makes a big difference. I watch my Guru Maharaj do it over and over and over again. Bhakti Maharaj. Over and over and over again. You're saying good things about the person, you smile. And then, so then they feel good about themselves for what the comment that you made about them. Then you act, you could do so and so and so and so and so. Now remember, you could do so and so. It's a suggestion about the right thing to do. You don't tell them, well, you do this wrongly, or don't do that. Then say don't do the negative thing. But then but you know what the positive thing is. So rather than say don't do the negative thing, just say Do the positive. You could do so and so and so. And you could is a very mild way to see it also. You don't just jab at them with words. It's very important to use mild words. That's a whole lecture in itself. So like that, and actually it's even suggested in this kind of when you finish saying what they could do, then you can praise them a little bit also, and then you just keep going. So you start with talking about the things that they do right. Maybe you just take one of them and say it. And then what you want to say, don't say you do this badly. You just say you should do, suggest the right thing to do. And then you end it. You end it nicely. Or sometimes you can just say just Hare Krishna. Or bear that in mind, Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Yes,
Like that.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely see the positives and yeah, start with a nice conversation. Then, yeah, thank you so much.
Nice comment. Yeah, nice comment. And then, yeah, it's not so easy on leaders, but with practice, again, it will become a habit.
That's
Hare
true.
Krishna.
Everything is in practice. Thank you. Dear devotees, any questions, any more questions? Revati Mataji, please.
Revati Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Prabhuji, for this.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Maharaj. All glories to all assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this very powerful class. So many points you have shared. And you said like peace form life. Everyone is Krishna conscious and everything is resolved. Everyone can be happy. That's really so true. But it's very difficult to convince people to become Krishna conscious, to take this path. So just last point, Prabhuji, just my personal struggle. I have a question. So you said like, when we are trying to associate with the non-devotees, you mentioned a very nice point. So when you follow the instructions nicely by Guru Maharaj, and after some time, it will become a habit, and you slowly will associate with everyone, like happily, like devotees or non-devotees.
Yeah.
So I have a struggle when I associate with non-devotees. Non-devotees means like extended family. They are pious, but since they are not into Krishna conscious, their way of living is a little bit different. So when I try to, I'm not really comfortable, in like associating and joining with them. So a lot of times I try to avoid, but due to that, I see like my relationship with them is going down. Like even though like they have family, I feel like I'm a little bit stranger in that thing. So even. I don't know how to handle this situation. I find it very hard. If you have any suggestions,
Hare Krishna. So just explain it a little bit and just a little bit. These are family members you live with, or they live in a different place from you?
Different place. They are extended family.
All right. So if you can contact them by telephone every now and then, do that, and see how they're doing, wish them well. When they bring up family situations, more than likely some of them will say things that they are uncomfortable with to you. That may be there. Sometimes they may say some things. Well, let's go to Krishna consciousness first. They may pass if they say something that is not in line with Krishna consciousness. The least thing you can do is ignore it. Okay, they're not Krishna conscious, so don't let that bother you. Don't let that bother you. But still, keep in touch with them. Keep in touch with them and ask how they're doing. And that way, they can't say that you ignored them altogether. Every now and then, if you can remember how we show love is also a nectar of instruction. There's 6 ways to show love. And for devotees, we use all 6 of them. Non-devotees, not all 6 of them. But the giving gifts, receiving gifts, don't worry about receiving gifts. You do your part in giving gifts. Give gifts to them and give them prasadam, when you get the opportunity, give them prasadam, because the prasadam also works. It does its work, because prasadam is Krishna's mercy. So like that, and just keep in touch with them and keep the conversation very light. You don't have to, especially for those who are a little bit troublesome, we don't have to talk to them for so long. Or sometimes even if we don't talk about them or talk with them directly, you can ask about how they're doing from another family member that relates quite well to, Then tell this person that I wish them well, in your own words now, so because you know your family, so you know what it is that you have to, say to them. And like that, keeping a good, simple, more to goodness type relationship with them, even at a distance, using technology, that would still keep them going. Every now and then, when you meet them, that you still have to be nice. You have to be nice to them at all times. And things that are a little bit troublesome, don't get involved in it. In those type of discussions, don't get involved in it. That way you keep your mind, and when you don't get involved in it, then if you're with them, then what do? In your head, keep chanting the holy name. In your head. When they say negative things, in your head, you go, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Ram, 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 Ram. Then you let Krishna take control of your mind. And then Krishna is very, very spontaneous, as you know. He will also help you in situations like that when you appeal to him by chanting. And so little by little, so what we're saying in summary is keep in touch with them from a distance using technology. Wish everybody well. Whatever it is that they got to stay, you can listen to it and give advice if the person asks for advice, but based on what we know and more the goodness, like that. If any one of them begins to question how you live your life and are curious to do the same, well, then that's the opportunity. Open up and tell them about Krishna, starting from how they refer to God by the name. And then you say, Bhakti Maharaj used to say, yes, God has many names. You can call him Allah, you can call him Christ, you can call, then he puts Krishna in there too. They've heard, like that. And the need to glorify the Lord all of the time. So you can be an agent slowly infusing more the goodness and ultimately Krishna consciousness into the family members who are ready. But as far as keeping in touch with them, if it's a little bit difficult for you, then do it from a distance. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for this. Hare
Krishna's
Krishna.
mercy, Guru's mercy. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you once again for this wonderful class and nice suggestions you gave to all of us. Thank you so much. We look forward to more classes and more association of yours in future, Prabhuji.
Krishna's mercy, Guru's mercy, whatever you want me to do, I can.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear devotees, for participating. Yes, Prabhuji, Krishna Chaitanya Prabhuji, anything you want to?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Vancha kalpatarupasya kripa sindhu
Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Chanamali Swami ki jai.
Ines Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Pariksit Maharaj, Prabhuji ki jai.
Thank you.
I'm just a mouthpiece. Don't worry about me. Guru and Guranga, that's what's necessary. Hare Krishna. Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.